All right, Cougs, here's the deal. If you wear swag from WSU or majority of those Cougs first businesses, there's probably a high likelihood it's tied to College Hill. There's no denying that they are a Coug business through and through, and that applies to their awesome CEO, Jen Gangwish, too. The brand has grown and evolved, but so has Jen. She's been a part of it for many, many years, and she started off in client services, has grown all the way up to leading the company. She's trailblazed her way through all of it, the good, bad, the ugly parts of it. And I'm just so honored to be joined by Jen, who I also would call a friend. We go way back. I'm so just happy that you're here, Jen. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much for the warm introduction. Honestly, we're just super ecstatic to be in this space. And so the journey of College Hill, it started with Tony and his vision. And I'm just so pleased that we've been able to work together side by side over the years to create what we have.
Yeah, I think it's such a cool business. And we were kind of talking off air, but I feel like people have different points of contact to College Hill. I think there's people back in the day, quote unquote, and I was one of them with the Greek t-shirts. It was above the Coug, I think, when it first started. So for those who may not know the origin story, do you mind kind of explaining how it got started and bring us up to speed to what it is today?
Yeah, no problem. So the company actually started with Tony Poston, so who many of you may know is now the executive director of Cougs First. But he started the company with two of his friends, and I believe they were sitting around at the Coug, sharing a beer, and really wanted to make a difference in the Greek apparel market. And so he created this company just knowing that he could do something better. And I'll never forget, like he came to me, hey, I'm going to start this company. I have an idea, but it's going to be in Pullman. Like, what do you think? And I was like, well, hit me up when you move over to Seattle because I don't want to go back to Pullman. But we just always kept contact because prior to College Hill, I had started another clothing company, and at that time he had owned a print shop. And so Tony and I go all the way back to college of working on ASWSU together. And so we just had kept in contact. And so the origin started above the Coug, you're absolutely correct. And it started with sought out to making the best Greek apparel out there to have we were the leaders in design. Everybody would come to us. We offered some like a really cool story behind it. It was really Greek serving Greeks. I was the first non-Greek that was hired into the company. And so we started out making apparel for sororities and fraternities. And honestly, I feel like I missed out in college by not joining a fraternity or excuse me, a sorority, because just to see like the way they look out for each other now and after school and the way the whole entire community moves, it was just so inspiring. I was like, man, I missed out. But fast forward, then I hopped in and I had to learn the Greek alphabet and all this stuff. I was like, oh my God, this is not for me whatsoever. And so Tony, then it was, I almost say, I want to say about a year to when he first had contacted me, he said, hey, I'm going to be over in Seattle. I just want to talk to you about expanding the office. I'm looking for an office space over there. And we went and met at a Tommy Simmons concert, and he's another Coug, if anybody knows, um, and in Fremont. And so he told me about his idea, and he's a visionary at heart, and so I saw what he wanted to create. And I just knew that I could help him, reach his goals. And I had a lot to offer. And so I came into the company and they were doing their orders by Post-its on the wall, and they were very organized. But I remember him saying one day somebody opened the door and all the Post-its kind of just flew, across the room, and it created chaos. And so when I came in, we were using a CRM platform that really wasn't built out. And I was like, man, there's so much here. Like, let me just help you and I can get this and I can build this out for us. And so the whole entire team can utilize it from design to marketing to client services to sales. And 11 years later, I have my 11-year anniversary in 3 days. We just have totally grown from our sorority and fraternity roots. And so well, we started out in the Greek community, which quickly then grew into the collegiate community. And then we had worked with over 300 universities across the country, and this was all within a 3 to 5 year span. And then what we were noticing is our clients were graduating, and then they were taking us along with them into their corporate careers. And so that was our marketing to get into the corporate careers. And I don't know if many people know this, but we actually started a different company called Genius Ghost to run corporate side of College Hill, just because we thought the message would be really convoluted, doing Greek and also doing corporate, and like, how do you brand that? How does that message come together clearly? Well, after 2 years of trying to run two different companies, we're like, oh, let's bring it back in under one roof. The only people we're confusing is our team. Nobody cares on the outside. And so we just kept chipping it away. And so we stayed really strong to the collegiate market. And then, COVID hit. Unfortunately, a lot of collegiate doors shut. A lot of the events weren't happening in the Greek community, but our corporate division rose 200%. And it hasn't stopped since then. And so I think misconception right now, if you're looking at our company, is the Greek and collegiate community is only 19% of our business at this point. And when I started, it was 100%.
Wow.
And so it's really cool for me to see like this division. I started a separate company has now become like the main business that we're moving forward with. And a lot of that and is the Coug community. I really dove into being a Coug and an alumni and what that means. I remember my first Cougs first event. I remember meeting Drew Bledsoe and I was like, oh my God, that's so cool to be a Coug. Like, look at what we're doing here. And so just to see like all of these businesses that Coug alumni have started, and that we are now having a hand in helping them either with their HR departments or their marketing efforts. It's just really, I don't, for better lack of words, it's just really cool that we get to be a part of that in some capacity.
Yeah, I think it's such a testament to staying true to who you are, but also allowing that to grow. And I think that's something that you guys have done really well, where there's that fine line of like, you don't lose that origin story. Everyone can think back to like the Coug. The name of that College Hill came from College Hill in Pullman, right? And it's like there's this nod to the tradition and what it was built off of, but there's also this massive opportunity that you guys have taken advantage of and grown the company with it. I want to know for you, did you always envision maybe not day one, but in the early days of College Hill, did you always envision yourself stepping into a more substantial leadership role, or is that something that just kind of happened to you?
Well, most people, if you ask them, they're going to say I'm extremely competitive. And that is true and true. I grew up playing volleyball, soccer, softball, and I think what I gravitated towards sports was one, it came really easy to me, but it was that team atmosphere. It was being able to get everybody in the trenches together with a common goal, and we were going to go after it no matter what. And so when I had an opportunity to come back to College Hill and work alongside Tony, it's just natural to me. Like I can't sit in the back seat and not speak up if I think that we could be doing something better. And of course, in a totally respectful manner. But at the time I was a true integrator. Like I could see his vision and I could see all the wheels turning and I can see where we can like make improvements to our processes, which then would help with overall morale and team building and just really focusing on the skills that our team members have so how they can elevate and make us better. And so from a very young age, have always just stepped into, I don't want to say leadership, but just wanting to make a difference no matter what circle I'm in or what capacity that looks like.
Yeah. I feel like you're an optimizer. You're the ultimate like how do we make this better? How do we make it more efficient?
Absolutely. And I
Yeah.
I always look internal too, like, even when things don't go right, I look internal first. It's like, okay, what could we have done better as a company to avoid this in the future
Yeah,
rather than just obviously like it was a bad fit. No, was it our training? Was it, what is it? Like there is always something behind it. And you got to find that like root problem before you can actually like grow and get past it.
for sure. You're part of the series, and when I told you, you're like, "Ugh, Kelsey." But I think it's important to tell this story. What's cool about College Hill is it was founded by Tony, which respect to you, Tony. I know you're going to listen to this episode. He's a dear friend of both of ours too. But what a cool experience to know and be a part of a lot of the beginnings, and then also that transition to you being the CEO. I want to hear from your own voice, like How did that conversation come to be in the first place? Like, when did that shift start to happen? Was there a moment or a conversation, or what led to this becoming the reality?
I think Tony and I might have two different stories for this. And so um, I think for a long time, and it's still, I don't want to say I have imposter syndrome, but I often look around, I'm like, why me? Like I work hard, I believe in doing good and good things will happen to you. And I think for Tony and I's like, relationship, I was never afraid to push the boundaries. And so I was always able and to give him like constructive feedback. Not that we always saw eye to eye on things, but I think that's what makes a healthy company is you have someone that has that opposing view or is thinking about it in a different capacity. And so I think it just came down to a certain situation and I may have had to redirect behavior in a certain light. And I just remember him saying, like, well, maybe I'm that cog in the wheel, and I'm the reason why we're not gonna get past this. And he definitely didn't say it to me in that moment, but that was, what he told me afterwards. He like really Tony's a thinker as well, so he goes back and he's dissecting it. And so I think for him, he's said, and it's still something I carry to this day, is like what got us here is not going to get us there. And I keep that same mentality. And I think the struggle for me going into this role is I believed in him and his vision for so long that I was so willing to do whatever it takes to get us there. Now, switching gears and being the one creating the vision and finding what my own leadership style was because I had in my head what this ideal leader is supposed to be. And, maybe I didn't necessarily hold all those attributes or necessarily believed in them. And so I was struggling with that as well as like, do I lead it like Tony did, or do I really find my own voice and lead it like how I want to? And so it's definitely still a work in progress. And I definitely have him and many, many other business owners and mentors that I talk to that have helped guide me to becoming the leader I am today. And it will forever be an evolving leadership. I'm very into like learning and growing and, learning from my mistakes, but also listening to the people we bring in our doors. I think that's the number one part of our success is we have been really good at hiring good people to come in and challenge us and elevate us. And one of my sayings is like we hired to elevate, not delegate. And so really when we're bringing someone in to work with College Hill, we're looking to see how can they make us better, and we're willing to listen to those suggestions.
It's so interesting. So I've interviewed two other CEOs for this series. Everyone has mentioned the importance of hiring the right people. And I think there's obviously something to that. And I think also what's interesting is there's no direct path to leadership. And that's why I was excited to talk to you about this and have this open discussion because I think sometimes we need to be reminded that it's not some linear path or perfect, skill set or personality traits that lead to that. There's many ways to get there. And I think even though your story's unique, it feels kind of different to you. I think that there's a reason you're doing what you're doing and you're doing a great job at it. So just thank you for being here and for sharing all that. I think it's important to have this discussion.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And I'm always a person like looking for what's next, and
Yeah, what
so
is
that's
next?
terrible, right? So I'm like, okay, we hit this goal. Okay, what's next? And
Yeah.
so I think that's hard for me sometimes is and another, I just don't love taking credit for everything. I'm very much in the weeds with the team, and it's the team that is driving us, and I'm here to serve them. And so I get very shy when it comes to sharing my story, and it's not because I have necessarily anything to hide. It's just it was my path, and it might not work for everybody else. But the advice I could give is if you really believe in something, don't be afraid to speak up and don't be afraid to go after your goals. And it's not too ambitious. Did I ever think I would be running Tony's company without him? Absolutely not. I thought we would be in this to the end.
Yeah.
But I am so thankful for the opportunity given. And, I hope I'm meeting his expectations, but, most important, I'm hoping that I'm meeting my team's expectations. Because at the end of the day, I'm here to serve them so they can do what they do well.
That's so good. So, what is next for you specifically as a leader? Are there certain kind of skill sets or what are you focusing on specifically for your what's next?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I've joined a few different CEO roundtable leadership groups. What's next for me is really building College Hill to that next step. We have been in startup mentality for so long. We have notoriously promoted really talented people like in their skill sets, but we haven't trained them how to be good leaders or offered any sort of guidance in that category. And so a main focus of mine this year is building my leadership team within College Hill and getting them the skill sets that they need to confidently lead the team. And so we're focusing on building this to be a career for our team members and not necessarily a stepping stone. Now, granted, I know not everybody's going to be here forever, and that's completely fine. But for those who want to be, I want them to understand that the company is going to recognize what they bring to the table and recognize who they are, and we're going to have a path for them, and it's not going to be one where you have to come and beg for a raise or just really have to fight and show like your worth. And so for me, I've always wanted someone to see my worth and like and have rewards come because they see it. I'm not going to them having to tell, I do this, I do this, I do this so well. But instead they recognize everything I do well and they come to me and say, hey, because of this, here's the path for you. And so we're really trying to like remove that stigma of having to ask for more money or having to ask for what's next and showing people if you want to be here, here's what it's going to take to get there.
Yeah, it's almost like being proactive with that growth plan. So
Yeah.
there's a piece of like growing with your people, but then also building the ladder for them as well. I think that's interesting. That is a shift. I One of the questions I had for you was what were kind of some of the core struggles in the beginning days, and then how have those changed and evolved to where the company's at today? Because to me, there's almost a couple chapters that you guys have lived through.
Yeah, I think it was developing, taking us from that startup to corporate,
Yeah.
and we tried a few different things along the way, but we had really good help. And I think that's something that I also learned from Tony is don't be afraid to ask for help and look for guidance outside of what we have here. And so during, oh God, I want to say it was like year 3 or 4, he had to have a really tough conversation with me, and he's like, you are one of the hardest working people, and no doubt people respect you and they understand, but they just don't want to follow. Like sometimes they're very intimidated or the way you speak just is just not motivating. And, I'm like, well, can you give me examples? And he's like, well, I don't have any, but I'm just letting you know that's what I'm hearing.
Good luck.
And so, but beyond that, then he
Yeah.
went out and got me leadership training, and he brought in Bria, who is also a Coug, and now that's gone on to do us create our own company that is flourishing, and I love to see that story too. But she came in with another company called Fired Up Culture, and they helped us create our company, like the bones of it. And so we started creating different departments, and we started to put people in charge of those teams, so it wasn't always falling on Tony to lead that. And I think that was like the first step in us like really getting to where we are now. And so it's always been learning. We know, like, I have no experience of starting a company, and definitely didn't learn it in college by any means. And so I'm so amazed with, I look around, I'm like, how did that company get started?
Mhm.
How did they know all the ins and outs of like HR and payroll and platforms and just marketing? And they really just had a great group of people. So that's something that I think College Hill has always been really fortunate in. And most of our employees have been Cougs, go Cougs, but not all of them. And so I think it's just us being willing to learn from our mistakes, and then being willing to go out and find other resources to help us build what we want to build.
Yeah, I think even just from my vantage point of watching your guys' company for years and years, decades, forever it feels like that's very true. And it's such an important lesson in business in that like don't be afraid to ask for help. And that's what's cool about the cougar community. People are willing. I mean, I know for you guys specifically, you always think Cougs First too. And for those that have wondered what Cougs First is or how to engage with it, I think College Hill's a great case study of that. And so I'd love to kind of end here before we do the rapid fire. What is your experience with Cougs First, and how do you feel like your guys' company has leveraged it to benefit, to be like a mutual beneficial thing?
Yeah, I think when we go in on something, we go all in. That's just our mentality.
Yeah.
And so for the first Cougs First, I remember just walking around that room and I was just so in awe that all of these businesses were Cougs and that this networking opportunity was created by some really what I say, some legendary Cougs themselves that had this idea of getting us all together to support one another. And so, and I do remember walking around and introducing myself to every single booth, whether they wanted to know who I was or not, whether they knew who College Hill was. And I just really laid into that. It's like, and that is part of our story is like by working with us at College Hill, like you're helping give back to that community at in Pullman and at WSU that gave us all our degrees and gave us these opportunities to be where we are. And so I think leaning into our story and being true to that is what's helped us in that community is we're still have our corporate office in Pullman. We always will. We're hiring students in design and marketing. So we are giving back to the community and creating jobs. We're sponsors for different groups out, including like WSU Athletics, Pullman Chamber of Commerce. Like we just immersed ourselves in being true alumni. And I think over the years, that is what's helped us be so successful in that category of alumni specifically.
Yeah, yeah. It's all relationships. And I think the message here is loud and clear. If you're listening and you're like, how do I make the most of this community? It's introduce yourself. Go door to door, whether that's virtual and you're, hitting Jen up on LinkedIn. I don't know if she's open to throwing that out there, but I threw it out there. Or coming to the trade show, coming to an event. I think just building that relationship goes a long way. Cougs First opens the door, but you have to walk through it.
Yeah, and just because you're kook doesn't mean they're going to work with you. Trust
Yeah,
me, you
it's a
have
chance.
to show up, and you have to just like you're pitching your business to anybody else, but it makes that first introduction a little easier, because you all can talk about your time in the Palouse. And, that's one of my favorite questions to ask at Kooks First is like, tell me one of the best stories or best memory you have from being at WSU. And then that just gets that, I think, pulls everybody's walls down a little bit, like you're okay, this is a coup, this is my people. And it's been really helpful for us. But in knowing that, we know we have to also expand outside the coup community in order to grow and get to where we want to go as well.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Okay. Time for some fun. Fun for me, maybe not so much for you, but we'll see.
Okay.
I have 5 rapid fire questions that are kind of related to being a CEO. Are
Okay.
you ready for them?
Shoot.
Okay, number 1, what does your morning routine look like?
I love this question. So the first hour is spent with my family. I'm really intentional with having the morning time with my son, just getting that time to set him up for his success and going off to school. And then before I hop into my day, I take 30 minutes to read an article about our industry, about leadership, just trying to educate myself, and I just think that's important. So every morning I read something, then I dive in and I just prioritize for the day. I try to make sure that I have enough time for my team. And so a lot of that is just prioritizing and making sure I can fit everything in the 8-hour day.
Yeah, that's awesome. Number 2, which college class do you feel like is most relevant in the business world? Even if you didn't take it, if you were to go back, or one that you actually did take.
Yeah, so I'm a psychology major, and so I didn't take hardly any. I don't think I took a single business class. So I would say maybe take a business class, if you're going down this path, but that wasn't for me. And so I got a lot of my business training, I'm gonna say from Enterprise. So right after college, I went directly work for Enterprise. And so they gave me that bug of how to run a business. And so I don't have an answer for this one.
Yeah, that's okay. Number 3, what do you feel like is the most important skill set that a CEO needs to possess?
Empathy.
Okay, maybe the psychology was worth it though. I feel like
Yeah,
that's a
true.
very psychology answer. So don't discredit the degree. I dig it. Okay, number 4, if you were to design a WSU College of Business course, what would it be?
I think I would go for, I don't know, maybe not business, but more real life experience. I think having a course where they prepare you for how to buy a home or prepare you how to invest and how you get your money to make money. I think that would be extremely valuable. And it's honestly one of the things that we end up coaching a lot of our team members on. And so if I had to go back and if I wanted to create, I would create a class on just like real life experience, things that you'll need to know probably in the next 5 to 10 years after graduating.
That's brilliant, and no one has answered that way. I love it. And the last one is, what one tip could you provide for people who are networking, whether at Cougs First in person or just networking in general?
The one tip I would have provided if you didn't say network was networking.
Okay.
Um, but being authentic in that networking, not putting your best foot forward, but just be real. People can read right through the lines of everything. And so in networking, it's not just networking, going to a conference, shaking hands. It's what networking are you doing outside of work? Like what circles are you part of? How active are you? And for me, there's opportunity everywhere. Everywhere I go, I'm like, oh, we could do that. Oh, we can do that, but it's about being genuine when you meet people and really wanting to understand where they're coming from and hear their story. I think that's often in sales specifically, that just gets glossed right over. And some of the best people on my team, they are just phenomenal at networking because they actually genuinely care about every single person that they're meeting. It's not a transaction for them.
Yeah, great advice. All right. For everyone listening, where's the best place for them to stay up to date on everything College Hill is happening, and how can they support the business too?
Yeah, a great question. I would say you start at our website, collegehill.com, and then sign up for our marketing emails. That's a good way to stay up to speed on everything. Yes, we have our social media handles and everything, but as I mentioned earlier, we're in a phase of graduation. And so we are getting ready to fully roll out a new rebrand, and that tells our services better and just tells like our story of who we are now. Of course, we're never going to forget where we were, but we're just in another place now. We want to showcase that. And so we're really excited about that rollout, and we hope you guys are too.
Mm, awesome. Jen, thank you so much for being here today and just being so honest and vulnerable. I truly, truly appreciate it.
Thank you. Like I said, I was really apprehensive about hopping on here just because I think you've had some great heavy hitters, and I've listened to every single episode and I've learned something from all of them. And so I appreciate you having this space to allow us to tell our stories and just being such a huge advocate for Cougs yourself.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for listening to. If you like this episode, let Jen know because I think she's a competitive girl. And if we get some comments that have her name in it, I think she'd be pretty happy about it. So definitely leave us a comment if you love this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone, and we'll catch you at the next one. Go Cougs.
Go Cougs.